I have no words for this one. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Marie and I'm so happy to see you here. Thanks for tuning in today. So today I actually had a very different video planned. I was actually supposed to go to Disneyland, but the weather was like terrible. So we decided to postpone the trip, and hopefully I will be making that Disneyland vlog in a month or so. Let's get started. So last night, while I was scrolling on my phone instead of actually paying attention to my job, as one does, I came across this Metro article called Netflix, BBC, and ITV set to ban corsets. So I'm going to go ahead and link that down below in the description box if you want to take a read. I am going to go ahead and read excerpts of it and just give my opinion and my hypotheses on what exactly seems to be going on, because this is really strange. So one of the first parts in the article reads, in a move to appease young actors, they will now be allowed to wear their own underwear instead of the restrictive undergarment. The corset is famously restrictive, and many actresses have complained to wardrobe departments about damage, both short-term and long, being done after a long 12 to 14-hour day wearing them on the set, a source told The Sun. Essentially, there were health and safety concerns about keeping women in a pinching corset for weeks at a time. Many stars have reported bruising and even breathing problems. So there is absolutely a problem if the corset is pinching you and bruising you. That is not what a corset is supposed to do. And yes, garments do get uncomfortable after wearing them for 12 to 14 hours at a time. You know, I'm wearing blue jeans right now, and I've been wearing them all day, and I'm ready to change into sweatpants. But the corset should never be harming someone. But I absolutely think these actors' concerns are very valid. I am not here to invalidate any actor and their experience in wearing a corset, because I don't think it's the actor's fault at all. And it's really upsetting to hear about these young actors being put in corsets hours and hours at a time, corsets that don't fit right. And fit is so important. Again, I'll get to that in a second. But it's really important to give them garments that fit correctly, especially when it comes to historical period pieces. There is going to be a lot more leniency in historical fantasy and fantasy, but in pure historical fiction, where you're trying to be accurate, that is really important, which the article also kind of bums me out when they're saying, well, now they won't have to wear the restrictive undergarments. They'll be able to wear whatever underwear that they want to. And that's fine and dandy, but the issue is when you're wearing a lot of historical garments, undergarments are what makes the clothes. You could have the most beautiful, historically accurate ball gown from the 1880s, but if there's no bustle, it's going to look flat. These dresses, especially made in the 1800s and the 1700s and the very early 1900s, the undergarments made them. Even if you look at dress from 1940s and 1950s, the undergarments did make them too. I wear a lot of true vintage. This blouse I'm wearing is true vintage, and when you're not wearing a bullet bra with a true vintage blouse or suit that's specifically tailored for that shape, it shows. And I'm not saying you can't do it, but if you're going for accuracy, you need to make sure that it's all there. And I know a lot of departments actually use extant garments. I have bought some from lot sales before, and I see that these garments are actually very old. They do get altered. I have this beautiful Edwardian skirt from about 1908 that was used in a production, and then it ended up in a lot sale, and I picked it up. So especially if the garment is an actual extant garment, it's not going to fit correctly unless you put the undergarment underneath it. So this is my big question. Why have these production houses, allegedly, I don't really know if they're doing it, Netflix actually hasn't even come out with a statement saying that, but why are they banning corsets altogether instead of providing resources to educate the costuming department and the production team in how to make proper corsetry? Corsets are a very tricky garment, and modern corsets that you buy off the shelf are terrible. They're just terrible, and they are not going to work the way you want them to work. I have worn many modern corsets in my days of early cosplay, and I bruised. I was definitely in pain. I could not breathe. So I understand. Coming from experience, I completely understand what is going on. What these actors need is a corset made for them. Specifically for them, the measurements, all the works. Something that makes them feel comfortable, knowing what the actors' limits are when it comes to corsetry, and maybe not tight lacing. This also sounds like an example of extreme tight lacing, which I don't even understand why they're doing that in Bridgerton. I love you, but why? Why? It just wasn't the silhouette. And yeah, I get that they're going more towards the route towards historical fantasy, but still. It is set in a Regency world, and the Regency silhouette seems to be very prominent there. So I don't understand. And even in eras such as the 1860s, where tight lacing seemed to be the most common, you could use padding, and you could use bigger hoops to create the illusion of a smaller waist and larger hips and a larger bust. I just have so many questions. I have so many questions. There is absolutely no excuse for putting your actors through an insane amount of discomfort. There just isn't. They added, in today's increasingly woke world, it's also not great optics to be encouraging women to have thinner waists. It may well have been reflective of the time, but broadcasters and streamers want to be seen as progressive. The source said this marked a big moment in the history of the period drama. Sure did, bud. Sure did. Bridgerton producers reportedly recently informed the cast that they would no longer be required to wear corsets. However, Netflix did not confirm to metro.co.uk if this was the case. It is also reported that ITV have already followed suit, with the BBC set to join the boycott. I have so much to say about this. Yes, in certain social circles and with certain people, the corset was actually used to thin out the waist, but that was not the main function of the corset. The main function of the corset was to provide support. That's like saying that the main function of the bra is to make the chest area look bigger. While certain people may use it for that, that is not its main function. Its main function is to provide support for the wearer. Guess what? Women of all sizes wore corsets. The issue has never been corsets in media. It's the lack of inclusion of body types in media that seems to be the issue. That's always been the issue. Accountability needs to be taken rather than blaming an article of clothing that was used by women of all social spheres. If you read classical literature, very few books even mention corsets because it was just a supportive undergarment. It was a part of life the way that brassieres are a part of life now. It just was. I really hope that BBC joining the boycott is really a rumor, because some of their shows have fantastic costuming. Downton Abbey, which I love. I own the Celebration book. I own all 6 seasons on DVD. I love that show. Comment down below who your favorite character is. Mine was definitely Lady Sybil. I find that show is so meticulous and it's so well thought out when it comes to the costumes. If you look at the costumes, they're absolutely gorgeous. They're absolutely accurate. I have personally not heard of anyone in the Downton Abbey sphere, any of the actors, feeling severe pain and hurting themselves quite seriously, because it seems like the costumes were well made. Another quote from the article, and this one really concerns me. Last year, Bridgerton actress Simone Ashley, who played Kate Sharma in the 2nd season, revealed wearing a corset was an intensely uncomfortable experience. I realized that when you wear the corset, you just don't eat. It changes your body, she told Glamour. I had a smaller waist very momentarily. Then, the minute you stop wearing it, you're just back to how your body is. I had a lot of pain with the corset too. I think I tore my shoulder at one point. Oh my god. That is absolutely horrific, and nobody should ever have to go through that. I mean, why are we allowing this? Why are we allowing actors to get hurt wearing these poorly made, poorly measured garments and deciding that the problem has to be the corset? Not looking internally and seeing, ooh, what can we do better? What are we doing? Where are we cutting corners? Is there anything we could do? Let me show you this corset I made, and I never did make a video of it because I wasn't making videos at the time. And it is not the best made corset, but as you can see, it does have the proper foundations. It is 2 layers, and it's made of steel boning, and it fits me correctly. I spent a couple months on this corset because I wanted to get my measurements correct, and I wanted to make sure that it fit me and it was comfortable when I was going to wear it for a 12 to 14 hour day. So in this corset, I can run, I can walk, I can jump, I can move. So what can be done to remedy this situation instead of just banning corsets outright? First of all, resources have to be made available. I did touch a little bit, but I'm going to talk about it just a little bit more. Not all costumers are corset makers, and not all costumers have to be. There are professional corset makers who have done this for a living. This is all they do. This is what they dedicate their lives to. It's really difficult to have one costumer do everything when it comes to film and television, because you're not costuming one person. You're making so many costumes. And sometimes you're making replicas of the same exact costume. But that would be something that would help remedy the situation and keeping their actors comfortable and safe and not hurt. I sometimes feel that these productions and these shows and movies also tend to use a corset as the end-all be-all oppressive tool. So we know what the corset was. A lot of people know what the corset actually was. In fact, a lot of anti-corset sentiment came from men in that era because they thought that women were growing too vain with the corset. So from a storytelling perspective, I really don't think that we need to use the big bad corset as shorthand for the patriarchy and gender imbalances. If we want to show imbalance among genders in period pieces, there are far better ways to do it. For example, using actual problems and social issues and double standards would, work just as well. Look at Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which is my favorite novel, and I could write 3 essays on it. That book is possibly one of the best examples of gender inequality I've ever read in the Victorian era, where it doesn't paint the female lead as this horrible, horrible human being. Corsets are not mentioned in that book. And from what I remember of the adaptations that I watched, I just watched the 1999, 98 one, corsets aren't really made a big deal. They're there. She's wearing a corset to work out in the literal fields for 14 hours a day. And yes, dress was definitely a form of compliance and fitting in to certain echelons of society. And that's absolutely something that you could tap into. And of course, if you have a rebellious character who doesn't want to follow convention, not wearing corsets would be great for them. But when you're just using the corset as the end-all be-all of evil, bad, no, it's not working. It's tacky. It's tacky and it's dated. Even shows like Bridgerton that are certainly not as heavy-handed as Tess of the D'Urbervilles is can absolutely use the social stratosphere, the socio-economic climate of the era to get their point across. Look at the marriage market in that show. I think showing that a 23-year-old woman who is rushing to get married because she doesn't want to be considered an old maid, while a 35-year-old man is hailed and celebrated as a bachelor, is really quite a lot to showcase gender inequality in the world of Bridgerton and Regency society, showing how these women, especially these upper class women, have to be married to save their virtue and other topics like that. Really get the point across. Anyways, those are most of my thoughts that I have on this topic, that conditions continue to improve for actors because no one should be having to go through those things. I just don't think banning corsets is the right way to go about it. I think there are better ways to go about it, and education is really key. If you'd like to see more of my poorly lit, sweaty face, although it's not so poorly lit today, go ahead and click the subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more of me, including what projects I'm currently working on, and I just got some supplies in it for the mail, and I'm so excited to get started, go ahead and follow me on my social media, which I will link down below in the description box and at the end of this video. That is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. Bye!